Welcome to the AKE Fitness Connect show. I'm your host, Amy King. Join us in this podcast series as we interview successful coaches from a wide array of health and fitness and wellness disciplines, as well as pros and amateur athletes or just fitness enthusiasts of all shapes and sizes. Here, we'll share valuable content to enhance your mindset, life and nutrition, all to help you along your epic personal health and fitness journey. All right, welcome everyone to another episode of AKE Fitness Connect. Today I have a very special guest. There's going to be a lot that we cover here, and we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics and why you will want to get to know this. So for those who are new to the series, this essentially is a podcast and it's designed to introduce you to different types of coaches out there. So if you're looking to make a lifestyle change in terms of your health and fitness or just in general, or you're looking to take your performance to the next level, I'm connecting with peers in the industry that do either the same type of coaching or different types of coaching. The whole idea here is that, I think sometimes people tend to go and buy things to what they're available or not sure what they're doing. Or what exactly what they're looking for. The idea with this is to actually just gently expose you to different options out there. So if you resonate with a particular coach, that you've then got an avenue to potentially go and find them. So anyway, without any further ado, who I have available is Nicholas de Castella, who is the founder or co-founder?
Founder, really, yeah.
Of the Australian Breathwork College. And Nicholas has been doing this for, over 30 years?
Yes,
yeah.
30 years this year, actually.
Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar with it, so I guess Nicholas does a lot of heart-centered work and breath work. And I know that breath work has become a lot more popular now. There's a lot more sort of mainstream attention on it. Things like the Wim Hof method, which is just one very small subset of breath work. Heart math, there's a lot of, talk and interest that's growing in this field. But essentially, from an Australian perspective, we have, I guess, what we could call almost like a founding father to the Australian arm of breathwork. So really keen to talk about Nicholas's personal story, what got him into breathwork, and then some of his favourite topics around this. So if you've had a piqued interest in quantum physics, in heart math, in breath work, then this podcast is definitely going to be for you. And at the end of this, you'll also get an opportunity to find out where you can connect with Nicholas. He also runs some free workshops on a regular basis as well. So if you are looking for a great session to really immerse yourself in it without any pressure, then definitely sign up for one of those. I can speak from experience that they are definitely worthwhile. That's about it. So anyway, again, I always do this beginning of the podcast. I speak for about 5 minutes instead of actually getting straight over to my esteemed guest. So over to you, Nicholas. Why don't we, if it's all right with you, we had a very interesting athletic and fitness journey in particular. So why don't we start there, and then we'll work our way into what got you into breathwork and basically your life purpose, I guess, if that's a way to put it. And we'll go from there. So, yeah.
Thanks, Amy. I'm delighted to be here with you and connect. It's beautiful.
Yes, thanks for being. Okay, so so why don't you talk to us about you're an avid runner, but you've also actually represented the country. So why don't you talk to us about the passion and the history behind that?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a running family. My dad ran and my older brother ran, and Rob de Castella is my brother. And so it was kind of, there was already a momentum there for that. And I had early talent. I was a schoolboy superstar in my days. And when I finished school, I went on and studied architecture and competed internationally in cross-country running, 4 world championships I ran in, and ended up running 2 hours 15 for the marathon, which was the 10th fastest Australian all time at that time. So I was right up there, and on scholarship at the Australian Institute of Sport for a few years. And athletics was my number one thing. A bit like you, I was working as an architect, but actually my heart was in the athletics, and I was training twice a day, 2 to 3 times a day even, 200 Ks a week, every day. Went for 3 years without missing a day's training. I ended up led into anxiety, chronic fatigue, and started to struggle in training. And that was really what led me into personal growth. And in 1988, did my first personal transformational workshop. And that was the big awakening to me that success is an inside-out game. I'd been doing all the right things on the outside, watching my diet, doing gym work, training, bulk, but actually wasn't getting the results that I was looking for. And then I realized that actually I needed to start with the mindset. And so I learned to meditate, to do creative visualization, goal setting, affirmations, all the package that people often get into these days when they're wanting to be at their peak in sport. And that just revolutionized my life. And before that, I'd actually done a thesis on the relationship between architecture and quantum physics. So I had this kind of mindset that was already a little bit departed from mainstream. And when I did this workshop, it just all the dots lined up, and it just made total sense with me that we are the creators of our reality. And I learned how to create my reality. And so I started to run faster on less training. And I realized that up until that point, I was the one that had been making my own life difficult. And using these skills, I reprogrammed my subconscious to believe that running was fun and easy. So I started to run faster on less training. All my athletic friends then going, what the heck are you doing? So then half of those people came to the workshop, and then I moved back to Melbourne from Canberra and ran the workshops in Melbourne, essentially hosted them, and then got involved and then did some breath work in early 90s and did my breathwork practitioner training in 92 and started working in rebirthing. And my family was devil worshipping, sent the parish priest around to check it out. And that was the fall.
All right, so I'm just going to pause there for a minute. We're just having a few connection issues, but also there's quite a lot to unpack in that. So I have some questions.
Sure.
So the first one is, okay, so we know that you literally hit the ground running from birth. You had basically running in your veins, because that's fine. So in terms of architecture, what appealed to you initially around architecture and pursuing a career in that initially?
Well, back in my days, school wasn't really related to careers. And I did pure and applied maths, physics, chemistry, and English. Got my highest score in English, as it turned out, and realized, that I have kind of capable on both the humanities area, the arts, and the science. And so seemed like architecture was something that was a bit kind of Renaissance,
Yes.
covering all bases. And that's been a gift, but it's also of getting spread too thin. But basically, that's how I got into architecture, really. And I love graphic design and stuff like that.
So it hit that element of creativity from an artistic, scientific, wanting to understand the world. So you'd almost, and then architecture is very much about creating as well, and it's about structure. So it's interesting that you kind of gravitated towards that in sort of the best way that you knew at the time. So that's really interesting. The second thing that I picked up in what you just gave us as well is, you're doing all the right things in terms of training. And then you never missed training and so on. And then obviously you did the personal growth and realized that there was a different way. So I guess that's another insight for me, is that, a lot of people will quite easily put in the hard work, particularly when they've got an athletic pursuit, and they will kind of always keep pushing. So that almost like what you were talking about the other day, that real masculine kind of energy of just push, just get through it. And you almost like being really harsh on yourself to try and get to a result. And you're almost gripping too tightly to a degree. And it's almost like, the alternative of potentially not reaching the goal is simply just not an option. And so you keep pushing through. And what tends to happen as well when athletes tend to get really excited is they tend to forget about the recovery piece. And quite often the recovery piece should be pretty much, you need to be just as disciplined on the recovery piece. It should be a 1-to-1 or a 1-to-2 or even a 1-to-3 ratio. Realistically, to actually extract that next level of performance. So it's often overlooked. People are like, well, there's no such thing as overtraining and so on. And it's like, well, yes, but you've got to think about what your recovery strategies are beyond just nutrition. And so, so that's really interesting. So was that just something that came like when you started to think of running being more fun? When you started to get better performance, when you kind of let go a little bit, so what insights did you get from that personal development journey that allowed you to have the space to sort of pare back the training to a degree?
What I realized, I had fallen into a trap of thinking that to be a top athlete, I had to train. It was to be a better athlete, I had to train. What I'm doing is making training harder and harder until it got so hard that I couldn't actually do it. And so I just basically ran myself into the ground. And so I thought, if that was how I started, what if I changed my mindset and just programmed that running is fun and easy? So that was my little mantra that I'd run along and say as I'd run. And I figured that, if I could run one lap of a track feeling easy and in flow today, then tomorrow I could probably run 2 laps with the same state. And then, extending that on, I would run faster and faster, maintaining that same state of ease. And that's what happened. And, that was a change of paradigm from having to work hard to be successful to actually considering this kind of flow state. Yeah. And the funny thing that happened in that was when I changed my paradigm, I got different evidence. And so what I started to notice was, at the Olympics, the people who were winning usually looked like they were doing it easy. And the people down the back were the ones that were doing it hard. So I got different evidence to prove what I believed when I changed my belief,
And so what's really...
Go on.
Oh, no, I was just saying, and what's really amazing around that, so, you improved your relationship with something that you already were enjoying, which is running. You sort of naturally gravitated towards that. And then I think it's probably important to call out, because we haven't, you're still running regularly now and participating in marathons. Is that correct?
I'm still running and I'm happy, but not doing marathons, which are 42 Ks, right? So I'm 62 and I do 10K on Sundays and 5K on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Along the lines of the second point that you made, which is that a lot of fitness is in the recovery. So my son runs and I tell him, you get fit on your days off, you get fit in recovery because you're stretching yourself and you actually, when you're doing the workout, you're actually breaking your body down. Exactly. And your body super compensates and rebuilds in the recovery. And it's actually in that recovery process that you're getting fitter.
Yes, that's true. Yep, because the body is rebuilding stronger and you're building that resilience in the system. Yeah, 100%. Okay, so I like how you're like, no, I'm not running marathons, but I'm still running 20 kilometers a week at, when most people, barely walk that in 5 weeks. So that's amazing. And I don't know if you guys can see the Zoomcast. If you're listening to the podcast, have a look at the Zoomcast, because honestly, Nicholas could be, an advertisement for men's healthcare in terms of skin regimes and looking very youthful and vibrant. So this is the other thing around breathwork that I do like, but I'm going off on a slight tangent here, is that, if you want to look and feel younger and feel energized and vital, and have a lot of vitality, then working on the stuff on the inside will definitely give you that. So anyway, that's my sales pitch for why you should do breath work, but I'll let the expert tell you what the benefit is of that. The third point is that I find really fascinating is I know that you kind of already gravitated intuitively towards like quantum physics and had an interest peaked in that and architecture, which is quite revolutionary when you think about it in the context of, you know, it's quite a left kind of field, and particularly back in that time, that even that the fact that you could even do a thesis on quantum physics and architecture is kind of amazing in itself. And the fact that it's, you know, it's come around and it's like a really popular kind of mainstream thing now. But in terms of actually getting into that personal growth workshop, I mean, that's still another step. You know, I don't know that many athletes that are pushing hard would think, oh, you know, what I'll do, you know, in the 80s is go and do a personal growth workshop. So how did that come about? Like, how did you make inquiries, or did the opportunity just kind of present itself to you?
I think, you know, they say, what do they say? Desperation is the mother of invention, or something like that. And I was like, I was in a big dark hole back then. You know, this chronic fatigue was really eating at me, and I was really depressed and struggling big time. And yeah, the opportunity just came up. I just heard this ad on this radio about this guy that travels Australia teaching people how to be successful and happy. And and my wife was away at that time, so I was like at home by myself. So I went along to this evening, and in Canberra, this guy was telling these really bad public servant jokes, and he just said one word, which was Olympics. As soon as he said Olympics, that was it. It's like, I'm in. Like, I'll do anything that I can to, you know, increase my odds of achieving those kind of dreams, you know. So that was it. But, you know, I do look back on that time, and I think there was providence involved in that. Like, it was kind of magical how I had done my thesis, and then this opportunity came up. But really, you know, I was just in a dark place, and I was desperate workshop, because whatever he said, I did it. I did it straight away. And I just, you know, my whole life changed radically in that one weekend, and set me on a trajectory that's continued on to today. And just, I'm still on the personal growth journey and learning, you know, sorry to depress anyone who's starting, but 30 years later, I'm still a beginner. And I love that, actually, because one of the things that I love about personal growth is discovering things that have been here all the time and I've never seen them before. And it's like, oh, wow, that's amazing. I put those connections in there a long time ago. And, you know, my life has just continued to get richer and richer, and we're surrounded by this beautiful heart-centered community of people that are passionate about their growth. And yeah, so I just, this is my life, this is my passion. And that's, you know, started right back then. And probably the piece that I haven't mentioned is the breathwork part, which is the guy that I was hosting these workshops for in about 91 or so, 90 maybe. He had a breathwork session in Sydney at a breathwork house called Aurora House, and I did this breathing session, and I was super fit in those days, you know, so I was like the steam train of breathwork. I was like pumping the breath big time, and I had this massive heart opening, and just amazing amount of emotional energy pouring through my body. And I realized that emotions are independently self-existing from their own side, whereas before that, I always thought emotions are the product of what we're thinking, and you just change your thoughts and you change your feelings. I felt this energy in my body that had no context. There was no thoughts that were connected. Woke me up to my emotional dimension, which I was pretty much unaware of before that, and set me on a journey to, I want to know what emotions actually are. I want to understand them, and I want to be able to master them. And so that's been a big current of the work through the days.
Yeah. And that's interesting as well. And I think, and sorry, I've just turned my video off because we're just having a few connection issues. So At some point, we might cover where Nicholas is actually dialing in from. He's got an amazing property over in Victoria, but we'll park that for the moment. I guess the other thing is as well, like, how was it for you? I don't mean to dwell on the negative, but I think there's a lot of value in and not overstepping that part, as well as, because there's a lot of young men and sort of, I guess, prevalence of depression. And I still feel, that for men in particular, it's still quite a difficult and stigmatized kind of process, and you were able to, without as many resources as there are available to people now, kind of dig yourself out of that hole, so to speak, and get the support you needed. So, I guess, what would be your advice for someone who's, in that dark hole at the moment, that maybe is a little lost or experiencing that kind of state that you were in back in those days?
Thanks. Yeah. I think the big dilemma that we've got in our culture is that we deny the reality of our emotions. And so if you're sad, people tell you to cheer up. If you're angry, they'll tell you to calm down. If you're scared, they'll tell you not to worry. And we're constantly getting this message that A, emotions don't exist, and B, if you're being emotional, that you're weak in some way. But unfortunately for me and many men that I see that are struggling with anxiety, and women, but particularly men, that we're not in the cultural norm because we're empaths, we're highly sensitive men. And that means that when we go through life, the events that happen in life bring up a lot of feelings for us. And so we have to kind of manage those emotions to continue to function and not get overwhelmed, which tends to turn as well. And so I think I see a lot of guys who don't understand that they're actually big-hearted, sensitive, feeling guys who actually think that they're weak in some way because they feel so much. And it's just, it's so misunderstood, because from my point of view, and that's where I came from before I was kind of aware of this emotional intelligence work, was I thought that it was kind of weak to get excited or anxious before a competition and stuff like that. So I was already kind of starting to go into lack of confidence and doubt in myself. Whereas now what I've discovered is that being an empath is actually a gift, and so empaths connect with other people. I can read people very easily, tend to be very intuitive, and empaths also tend to be kind of deep thinkers and quite perceptive and wise in that way. So there's a lot of gifts and strengths in being a highly sensitive person, but it's a double-edged sword that comes with that need to have to manage all of those emotions in a culture that teaches us that it's weak to be emotional. So when you understand that emotions are natural, that as human beings, we're physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, we start to embrace this emotional dimension, we start to realize that emotions are energy that empower us, and they're also information that's informing us. And so you can actually harness your emotions when you work with them in a positive way. Instead of trying to repress them and then driving us, we can actually harness the power of emotions. Like when we get angry, it's usually because something needs to change. It's often about a boundary that's being violated, some place where we need to come forward and express ourselves. Fear is informing us that we could be in potential danger, or that we might need more support, more information to take extra care around some situation. And sadness is like part of letting go of what's gone already, but we're still holding on to it. So, all of these emotional states that we have are actually part of being a full and whole human being and functioning at our peak.
Yes. Yeah, makes sense. And then I think, Yeah, and we need the space to be able to let those emotions flow rather than, you know, being stored up in the body and so on. Um, yeah, that's great. And I understand as well, Nicholas, just in some of our conversations previously, is that you also had a tragic car accident as well, which I guess led to some of this journey as well. So keep focusing on all these like pain points in your journey. I'll get to the fun stuff in a minute. But yeah, so what impact did that have on your training and what sort of, I guess, how was that? What was the key things that you really took away from that experience, I guess? And
Yeah. Well, my friend at the time, Andrew Lloyd, who won the Commonwealth Games, flew down to the coast for the weekend from Canberra, and it was dark, and we came around the corner, a truck was kind of on the wrong side of the road and hit us. So it was a head-on car accident. It really shook all of us up, and I think it added to the anxiety that I was suffering already, and just kind of participated this personal development, waking up a couple of years later. And I think the thing that I took away from it, which I only realized a long time ago, long time after the accident, which was that life is really precious, you know, and it's really important to enjoy it and live it fully. And that was a very subtle thing that kind of came through, but I shifted from being so driven and hard on myself and open up the doors to having more fun and free.
yeah, amazing. All right. And then, so you're really living your, I guess, ideal life at the moment. So whereabouts, I planted the seed, so there's probably a bit of curiosity there for the audience, but so you're living where you want and you're doing the work that you want to do. And we'll go on to your work very shortly. But yeah, do you want to just give us a picture of the lovely place that you reside with your family?
Yeah, I probably, when I stopped working as an architect, and in those early days, when I was in my mid-30s, before that, I was kind of an adjusting personality that wanted to make, that was possibly working for some of the other people around me, but it wasn't working for me. And I realized that really, that if I wanted to find happiness, I had to listen to my own inner truth and follow that. And that led to some big changes in my life at that time, which included stop competing, quit architecture, got divorced, and started following my heart. And ever since I took that big leap out of doing all the right things to actually doing what felt true and right for me, I have felt blessed and supported by life. Amazing people have shown up in my life and opportunities have just opened up in front of me to step into, which always is scary to step into the next opportunity. But one thing has just led to another. And now we live on 7 acres of rainforest in the Dandenong Ranges mountains on the outskirts of Melbourne. We're like 30 minutes from the CBD, but we're actually in the forest. You wouldn't know where you were here.
Yeah.
And a beautiful, passionate marriage with Susan, and we've been together for over 20 years now, and we have 2 fabulous boys who are now young men, and living the dream life, really. And it's just happened by stepping into mystery and trusting my heart and taking that next step and next step and next step. And now I walk around here going, wow, this is amazing. We have a house, a retreat center, 5 cabins, workshops, everything's carried on here. And we're only just a stone's throw from Melbourne. So it's fantastic.
Yes. That's amazing. And then you've been obviously in the game for a while in terms of this and built quite a successful business around breath work. In fact, you actually train the trainers, I said, I guess, and create new coaches out there to get that message out there. And obviously now with things picking up, starting to get busier as this becomes a little bit more mainstream. But how about we talk about what it is that the Australian Breathwork College does and what your favourite part of that is and what we can expect to see in the future?
Thanks. Yeah. So as I've already said, we've been doing breathwork for like 30 years now. And for most of that time, it's kind of been a bit in the backwaters. And thanks to Wim Hof, and bringing in this peak performance living with the intermittent hypoxia of the breath holding and the deep breath, he's brought breathwork to the front line of mainstream culture. And we've been training practitioners for 20 years. And I think that the deeper current that's moving in this is that I believe that humanity is awakening to a different way of understanding our place here and being on the earth. And that is, we're coming back into relationship with ourselves, with each other, and with the planet. And we're realizing our oneness, which is really a quantum physics thing, which started on the mid-80s. And breathwork is the modality that connects us from our head to our heart, you know, and because breathwork brings us into the present moment, it energizes our body, and it creates that flow state that we all want to live in. And so this is a fabulous time in our culture to get into breathwork. And it's exactly what humanity needs for us to make this leap. Because I think, you know, if you look at humanity, where there's a personal crisis of loneliness, anxiety, depression, loss of passion, loss of direction, all these kind of things. There's cultural problems that we have of loneliness and isolation, of discrimination and things like that. And then there's obvious global issues, environmental issues and stuff like that. And I believe all of these pain points are actually pushing us to wake up to the fact that we're intimately connected with everything in our life. And the bottom line of the crack, where it started from, was the disconnection between our head and our heart, that we, in the West, became cognitively orientated. We became very cerebral, and we look through that lens in the classical science approach as the things outside of us, our objects. And in the same kind of way, you know, as a body trainer, we look at our body as an object often too, and we forget that we're actually in this body, and this body is part of us, and this body is talking to us. And, you know, you can't get out of your body. It's this earth life is experienced through our body, and we need to listen to the feedback of the body and not use willpower and just kind of try and force things to happen. And that's usually how we get injured and damage ourselves. We're not listening to that wisdom that's in the body too.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I mean, I love that idea of being more connected with yourself, so that you can then find that connection with others and all things. And often when, you know, there's people who are trying to get into, you know, making a lifestyle change, or they're looking for a body composition change, they're looking for an outcome goal. Whereas, you know, like for me, you know, when I'm training, I love doing a heavy lift, because you get this moment of calm, because you can't think about anything else when you're under load of a very heavy weight, right? So you've got this like 10 seconds or 15 seconds of you trying to push this weight up, and there's this absolute calm, and you're in that flow state, and it's a beautiful moment. We won't talk about the pain afterwards or anything like that, but, you know, it's still a worthwhile experience in terms of actually getting out of your head and feeling really connected with your body. And then all you can do is really concentrate on your heart and getting everything to work together to get to that, you know, just that very simple outcome, and bring you back into the present moment. So, but yeah, breath work obviously is the easiest thing. And what I love about breath work is, well, you've got plenty of opportunities to practice, because as you say, once you take a big breath in, you're committing to another 5 minutes on earth, which I love that. I love that saying. And yeah, so this is really good. So I understand as well that you do, obviously you train the trainers, the practitioner trainers. You also do men's retreats, you know, a lot of private consultations, seminars, workshops, all those sorts of things. Now, I think what's really interesting is, and probably something that's I find personally, I think is a really good thing for the male audience out here, is the men's retreats. So do you want to tell us a little bit around what's involved in that?
Well, basically, you know, this is my opinion on it. We have a lot of, and the tendency is to try to kind of equalize everybody, say everybody's the same, and yet, you know, there are fundamental masculine, feminine differences that most Indigenous cultures uphold. And because we don't appreciate what that masculine and feminine essence, which we all have both within us, but we have generally, men have more masculine essence and women tend to have more feminine essence. And even in, you know, same-sex relationships, you'll see one partner usually has stronger sense of masculine and the other more feminine. So it's not really male, female, but it's just appreciating that masculine and feminine polarity, and then working in a positive way with embracing that within ourselves, and also appreciating the differences. Because if you don't recognize the differences, you just get into competition by trying to bring the other to us, you know, and comparing that. And generally speaking, the masculine essence in traditional cultures is the witness consciousness, the awareness of the object of our experience. And the feminine essence is more related to the flow of energy, of emotion and sensuality. And so in the men's weekends, one of the things that we work about, what's your idea of it, so that we can kind of get clear on those roles. And there's an opportunity in the men's work, and Susan runs the women's work also, for the men to get together and experience a different kind of masculinity that's not based on dominance and competition, but it's actually based on mutual support and play, and starting to appreciate the kinds of qualities that the masculine and men bring to the table. When we live in a culture that there's patriarchal society, and we kind of cop a lot of flack about, you know, violence and stuff like that. It's kind of linked into men and stuff like that. And there's a lot of gender confusion, and men kind of a bit lost, not quite sure, what am I supposed to be? Am I supposed to be strong and hold the space, or am I supposed to be kind of apologizing, and do I open the door for a woman or not? And so, you know, because of that kind of wishy-washiness, it waters down in a relationship, and so they can't really get into their feminine energy if the men aren't stepping up into their masculine. And so in the workshops, we honor that. So we have a rite of passage ceremony in the workshop where we honor the coming of age of the masculine and the men in the group. And most cultures have this ceremony, but men don't. And so that also attributes to the shame that we feel in the masculine, and weakens our position. So and the same goes for the women in the women's workshops. That's me in our culture that acknowledges and celebrates the manhood and womanhood. And so that's really flows through our culture too. I think it makes us very superficial. And for a few years, I was subscribed to the Men's Health magazine, and after a while I unsubscribed, because on the front cover there was a guy with a six-pack and a story about how to have better sex on every single edition. And I was like, there was no kind of articles about Mahatma Gandhi or Richard Branson or men that we should be aspiring to. We just kind of have this very narrow middle-aged slice of this is what a man's supposed to be, and it's kind of thin, you know. We don't honor eldership and stuff like that. So the men's work and similarly, you know, the woman's work, a really important part of loving ourselves as a man or as a woman, and really embracing who we are at that level.
Yeah, it sounds like important work, and a lot of fun as well. So I think just the rite of passage ceremony would be really powerful in itself. Yes, that's interesting work. So Nicholas, thanks so much for that. So when is your next free breathwork session, if anyone wants to come along and try that?
You'll see you can actually enroll in an evergreen webinar, which is available right now, and you can learn about how to use breathwork to enrich your life straight off. My main focus, as you mentioned before, is training practitioners these days. So we now, thanks to the COVID lockdown, have an online breathwork coach training that a lot of personal trainers are doing, so that they can to help them to use breathwork to access the subconscious blocks and step up to the next level. And also, they can bring in another income stream. Our next professional training is August 6th and 7th is when it starts. But if you head off to the website, you can actually download the webinar recording that's got a whole body of understanding of what it means to live from your heart rather than from your head, and how to use breathwork in peak performance.
Yeah. And we're not just talking peak performance, in athletics pursuit. It's, for anyone who's a high performer in any area, whether that's their career or in their relationships or whatever that they want, your life's purpose is that, breathwork helps make you feel connected and get you into that flow state so that you perform better with more creativity and space and able to give to others better. So, it's the good thing is it doesn't involve exercise, which is great. The other thing is as well, we just have a bit of a internet connection issue because I'm in Perth and obviously, Nicholas is in the wilderness. So we're not experiencing the best, but for those who didn't catch that website, it will be published with obviously the blurb that goes with this podcast and Zoomcast, but it's www.breathwork.com.au. So pretty straightforward. And you can also email info@breathwork.com.au. And Nicholas is also a part of our forums as well. Or if he's not, I will definitely be adding him to our private groups and so on. So, very approachable. So if you've got any general questions and so on, we'll do that. I think if Nicholas, if it's okay with you, I think, it's all good, well and good for us to talk about the power of breath work. But do you think we have time to potentially do a 1 or 5 minute exercise so people can experience the power of it themselves?
That'd be great. Yeah. I think that's a fantastic idea, because talking about it and experiencing it are two worlds apart. Well, so let's do that.
Yeah. And, as a personal trainer and a nutritionist and all those sorts of things, I'm very much into the tactile because that's, it's more visceral that way, I'm a visual learner, but I also love the kinesthetic feel of things. So I think, it's a really great way to kind of start your weekend if you're catching this podcast on a Friday. And obviously you'll have this. So this will be pretty much at the 55-minute mark. So if we'll just point that out as well. So if you're just looking for a quick meditation, I might extract that as well and have this here. So over to you, Nicholas. I will stop talking and well, this is great. I get a free little breathwork session here too. I'm loving this.
Find a comfortable position. Let your eyes close gently. Take a few moments just to be here in stillness, not going anywhere, not trying to make anything happen. Just give yourself permission to be here now. Bring your awareness fully into the present. Turn your attention to your breathing. Become aware of the breath as it flows in and out, breathing gently and deeply, expanding and letting go. Bring your awareness now into your physical body. Begin to tune in to the physical sensations that you can feel. Be aware of any warmth or coolness, any tension, any heaviness. And as you begin to tune in to the physical sensations, also be aware of the energy that's present, the emotion. Take a moment now to identify the predominant emotion that you can feel. You feel happy or sad, excited or nervous, frustrated or peaceful, calm. Maybe you feel blank. Just take a few moments now to identify the predominant emotion that's present and notice where it is in your body. Whatever you're feeling, just give yourself permission now to allow that feeling to be fully here. Breathing into the feeling and letting go. Expanding and letting go. Just allowing the feelings to be fully present. Now, turn your attention to your heart. Tune into an area in the middle of your chest and imagine that you can breathe in and out through your heart, expanding and letting go. Notice how your heart feels. As you focus on your heart, take a moment to call to mind something that you feel grateful for in your life. It might be good health, opportunities that you enjoy, friends, people who love you. And as you focus on this sense of gratitude, breathe into your heart and allow it to expand. Just feeling the breath flowing in and out through your heart and through your whole body, expanding and letting go. Allowing the energy to flow through you freely. Take a conscious breath into your belly, expanding and letting go. And a nice deep breath down to your hands and feet as you gently begin to bring yourself back into the room. When you're ready, you can let your eyes open gently.
Yeah, and that's it. So I think there's a couple of things here. So if you are listening to this later, please put in the comments, what your stress levels were at the beginning and how they changed. For me, I think I went from a 6, I was feeling pretty relaxed today, and I'm probably at a 3 now. So that was I'm feeling pretty good, which is, thank you very much for that, Nicholas. I think the other takeaway from that as well is that, you know, even as a health and fitness and performance coach, you know, I'm very big on when people are feeling overwhelmed to think of what a 5-minute action that they can do that's going to help get them cadence towards their goals and take away some of that anxiety. Breath work is definitely one of those key 5-minute activities, or meditation and so on. And I think as well that if you're interested in actually making a transition in terms of your lifestyle, or getting to that next level of performance, you can't look at, we don't happen in vacuums. You know, you have to look at everything from a holistic point of view, and that's looking at how you're performing in your body overall. So you can expect that if you work with me, we look at things like your sleep, we look at your nutrition, we look at your social support, we look at your inner game to a degree, and we socialize across those things. So I just wanted to thank Nicholas again, an amazing, passionate breathwork and very important person, I think, in the health community, doing some great things out there. And to the coaches who are in this network as well, you know, if you're thinking of one, extracting a better level of performance in your business or your personal athletic pursuits, or even being able to, you know, offer additional services, you know, to your clients as well, to extract better value, or basically better results for them, and take a whole of person approach to your services, then yeah, definitely recommend exploring Nicholas's practitioner courses. That's on my hit list. I've just got to stop trying to do 5,000 things at once and focus on one thing at a time. So that's my challenge at the moment. But yeah, highly recommend you getting in contact and following up with Nicholas, and experiencing for yourself the power of breath work. So now, interesting fact as well, and if I can remember, there's actually more neurons in the heart than there is in the brain. Is that?
Well, how many neurons? I'm not quite sure. There definitely are brain neurons, but the science is suggesting to us that twice as much information goes from your heart to your brain as from your brain to your heart. So the feedback to the brain tends to be on the vagal nerve, the parasympathetic system, whereas the dorsal nerve tends to be more from the brain to the heart. So it's a kind of a loop. And so studies show that it appears that the brain is being informed by the heart. You know, we can experience that directly by just thinking about what kind of thoughts do we have when we're feeling sad, and what kind of thoughts do we have when we're feeling angry. It's clear that the brain is affected by our emotional state. It functions in different ways. And so what we do at the Australian Breathwork College is we help people to connect to a state of being of peace and love and happiness, and then organically, naturally, we tend to think more positive and perform at our best from there.
Yeah, amazing. So I think, yeah, if that doesn't tell you why a heart-centered approach is valuable experience and getting to the heart of the matter, just to throw in another pun there, then hopefully that's giving you some insight. So yeah, a wealth of knowledge. There's plenty of stuff that you can learn and socialize yourself in terms of heart math and quantum physics and so on as well. So be happy to share some of the great books where you can find out more about breath work and all the other things as well. So thanks once again. I've kept you over time, Nicholas. Look, if it was up to me, I think Nicholas and I would probably talk about this stuff for about 3 hours, but unfortunately we have other commitments that we need to adhere to. So let me know if you enjoyed this episode, if you want to hear more, and if you've got any specific questions, then we'll get those addressed. But thanks again, Nicholas. Have a great weekend, and thanks for your time.
Thanks, Amy. It's an absolute delight to connect with you and spend some time talking about these things. And thank you to those that are listening in for tuning in. And yeah, feel free to reach out and let me know your feedback or if I can support you in any way.
Thank you for listening to yet another episode of AKE Fitness Connect. Really keen to see what your 3 key takeaways were from the podcast. So feel free to comment below, comment on the socials, connect with me on socials, or visit us at our Linktree site, AKE Fitness. Thank you.